3rd of Sun's Dawn, 4E202, Day 171. Despite the Greybeard's lack of social interaction, I was a bit sorry to leave High Hrothgar. It was certainly a peaceful place, so remote that one could almost forget about the world entirely. While that was a tempting idea for me, I knew I had to face this. I could not run away from what I was, from the gift that I had been given. Master Arngeir had encouraged me to continue honing my voice and to visit the rune walls to learn more of the dragon tongue. He explained that the magical runes I could see on the walls were simply words of power, awaiting a Dragonborn to unlock their secrets. Determined to follow his guidance, I packed up and left High Hrothgar early in the morning. The ride down the mountain was breathtaking, and not just because of the wind. I felt like I was on top of the world. I could see for leagues all around, and the clear, sunny day made the views all the more spectacular. As soon as I arrived back in Ivarstead, I was accosted by 2 masked figures in strange robes. One of them asked me if I was Dragonborn. When I answered in the affirmative, he angrily shouted that I was lying and attacked. With the help of the town guards, both of my masked assailants were defeated. I had hoped to interrogate one of them, but the guards, and Lola, had shown them no mercy. Rifling through their belongings for clues, I found a note which commanded them to kill the false Dragonborn, presumably me, on behalf of someone named Miraak. The men had come from Raven Rock in Solstheim, an island across the Sea of Ghosts, which could be reached by ships leaving port at Windhelm. Although I was intrigued, I did not need to be distracted from my current mission. Pursuing the mystery would have to wait. I stopped by the falls behind the inn to refill my water skins, and noticed a ragged man staring at me from the ramshackle house across the river. I crossed over on the rocks near the falls to investigate. He began rambling about someone named Rada, and I could immediately tell that he was not quite sane. When I asked if he was okay, he just continued his ramblings, and I could not get a lucid thought from him. I gave him a gold coin, he appeared to need it, and decided to ask the innkeeper about the man. Back at the Vilmir Inn, I spoke to Wilhelm while eating a hearty lunch. He said that the man's name was Narfi, and that he was upset about his missing sister. The woman had been known to gather herbs on the small island near town, and one day she just disappeared. Wilhelm told Narfi that she would return, but he confided to me that he believed her to be dead. I decided to take a quick look around the island to see if I could find any evidence of her whereabouts. Sane or no, I thought the poor man deserved to know the truth. Heading for the island, I skirted the shoreline by the southern bridge out of town. There, through the crystal clear water, I noticed a skeleton lying at the bottom of the river. With a sinking feeling, I waded out. Pinned beneath the bones was a leather satchel, which broke free with a sharp tug. Inside were a collection of alchemy ingredients and a silver locket with the inscription, "For Rada, our beloved daughter." It was with a heavy heart that I took the locket to Narfi and told him of his sister's death. Although obviously upset, he took the news better than I expected, and even thanked me for bringing the locket as a remembrance. He also gave me the remaining alchemical ingredients that Rada had kept in her stores. I was touched by the generosity of the man, who clearly had little material wealth to give. Looking over my map to plan the return home, I noticed Orphan Rock, and remembered Danica Purespring's request to help save the great tree in Whiterun. I decided to take the southwestern route from Iverstead so I could stop by Orphan Rock to confront the Hagravens. It would make for a longer trip, but I did not think it would add too much time. Lola and I had experience fighting the hags from our visit to Darklight Tower. As we turned west down the southern road, a dragon swooped down right in front of me. Another one! Ignoring my surprise, I quickly ducked away from its frosty blast and ran back to parallel its hind legs. Somehow, Lola managed to keep its attention while I hacked at a wing. It seemed easier to fight the beasts on the ground, so I was hoping to damage the wing enough to keep the dragon from taking flight again. As the beast twisted its head about, snapping massive jaws at Lola, I saw an opportunity. With its head lowered in my direction, I leapt upon the great creature's neck. Holding onto a dorsal spike with one hand, I bashed the enormous skull over and over with my mace, while the dragon roared and thrashed in rage. Finally, with a mighty finishing blow from Frostbiter, my mace has earned a name, the creature was defeated. It reared up one last time on massive hind legs, and then slumped to the ground, dead. Again, I could feel the power of the great beast even as it lay before me in death. And again, as with its two brethren who died before it, the power began to flow into me. I felt fury, pride, and loathing, so strong, yet filling only a distant part of my mind. I stood before the dragon's corpse and let the power wash over me and into me until the feelings subsided into a dull knot. I gathered some bones and scales from the remains, wondering about the sudden appearance of the creature. I had assumed the attack by White Watch Tower was simply a coincidence, but now I was not so sure. What if the dragons were actually targeting me? Could the manifestation of my gift be drawing them in? It was an alarming thought. Despite having defeated 3 dragons now, they were not foes I could dismiss lightly. I would need to keep my eyes on the sky. Continuing on our way, Lola and I found the Hagraven at Orphan Rock, guarded by a number of magic-wielding hags. We took care of them without much trouble and collected the magical dagger Nettlebane. Wanting to deliver it straight away, we headed down the road towards Whiterun. The sun was setting as we reached Riverwood, so I decided to stop for a meal at the Sleeping Giant. With the innkeeper back, a warm, soft bed was available, and I could not resist after our cold, tiring day. I stayed for the night and planned to continue to Whiterun in the morning. Fourth of Sun's Dawn, 4E202, Day 172. Before leaving the inn this morning, I took a moment to speak to Sven, the bard. I had intended to compliment his music, but he didn't give me the chance. Instead, he immediately started talking about Camilla Valerius. He seemed to believe that he owned the poor woman. From what I've overheard of her conversations with Orgnar, she is not yet committed to either of the men she likes here in Riverwood. Sven even went so far as to give me a nasty letter he wrote, asking me to deliver it to Camilla and say it was from his rival, Faendal. I took the letter, but decided that Camilla needed to know the truth about Sven. I wouldn't want her to find out too late what a jerk he is. Needless to say, Camilla was not impressed with Sven's trick. She asked me to tell Faendal what happened, and he was so grateful that he gave me some coin. The rest of my trip to Whiterun was blessedly uneventful. After visiting all the shops and stalls to resupply, I went to look for Danica Purespring in the Temple of Kinnereth. I found the priestess speaking with a pilgrim who was upset about the Gildergreen. He had apparently traveled far to come and worship at the great tree, and he blamed Danica for its current condition. Although she explained that the tree had been struck by lightning, and that she could not neglect her duty to those injured in the war to worry about the tree, the pilgrim was unforgiving and continued to berate her. I felt bad for Danica, as I really believed she was trying her best. When the pilgrim walked away, I approached the priestess and tried to give her Nettlebane. She shied back and admitted that she hadn't expected me to return. Not wanting to touch the unholy weapon, she bade me to visit the Eldergleam myself and gather some of its sap. Danica believed she could use it to wake the tree in Whiterun. I will admit to some annoyance that she had sent me after Nettlebane without being confident that I could handle the mission. But for the good of the temple and the glory of Kinnereth, I agreed to gather the sap. The pilgrim must have overheard our conversation, for he approached and asked if he could accompany me. For the devout follower of Kinnereth, a trip to see the Eldergleam would be a momentous occasion indeed. I took pity on the man and agreed to let him come. Since he was unable to worship at the Gildergreen, the least I could do was help him reach Eldergleam Sanctuary. We stopped for lunch at the Bannered Mare. As the Red Guard barmaid, Sadia, was taking my order, it occurred to me that I should perhaps warn her about the Alakir warriors I'd run into by the front gate. They were looking for a Red Guard woman, offering coin for information about her, but would not say why. They must have been causing trouble because the guards turned them out of the city. I found it all very suspicious. They had shifty eyes, and I did not trust them. When I mentioned it to Sadia, her eyes went wide with fear. She exclaimed, "They have found me!" and asked for my help. I followed her to her room where we could talk privately, but the first thing she did was pull a dagger on me. Believing it was just fear that drove her to desperation, I tried to calm her down so we could speak. She claimed the Alakir warriors were mercenaries, hired to kill her because she spoke out against the Altmeri Dominion in Hammerfell. Their leader was a man called Kimatu, and she begged me to find and eliminate him. With him gone, she believed the rest of the mercenaries would scatter, leaving her in peace. The first step was to interrogate one of their number who was being held in the Whiterun prison. After eating lunch, I went to the prison. The Alakir prisoner hardly seemed like an honorable man, and it certainly did not sound like he worked for an honorable group. His comrades had abandoned him there in prison, simply for being caught in Whiterun without permission. I ended up having to bribe the prisoner for information by paying his fine. He told me that Kimatu was holed up in a cave near Whiterun called Swindler's Den. He also told me that they would kill me just for entering. With each encounter, my dislike and distrust of these Alakir grew, and I wanted to chase them out of Skyrim. For now, though, Sadia was on high alert, and the guards were refusing to let the mercenaries into the city. So I figured dealing with the Alakir could wait a little while. I gathered up Lola and the pilgrim, whose name was Maurice Jondrell, and we headed for my cottage. Uthgerd had been taking good care of my steading. She seemed to have taken to the role like a fish to water, and she asked if she could stay on indefinitely as my steward. I happily agreed. With Maurice tailing me, I was reluctant to speak to her about my visit to the Greybeards. She seemed to understand, so we talked instead about plans for the house. Uthgerd thought we should expand. I gave her free rein and plenty of gold, only asking that she not turn my home into anything too fancy. I would not feel comfortable with highbrow living, and I really didn't wish anyone to think I was putting on airs. I spent the rest of the day unpacking and organizing the house, and then we shared a hot meal and some ale for dinner. I could definitely see the need for expanding, since I only had one bed and 3 people who needed one. Uthgerd bunked up with me while Maurice laid out his bedroll on the floor. It might have been close quarters, but at least we were all warm. 5th of Sun's Dawn, 4E202, day 173. It was a beautiful sunny day, and I spent most of it outside working. I tanned some hides and smithed a supply of iron nails and fittings to leave for the builders that Uthgerd plans to hire. I was able to escape my shadow, Maurice, for long enough to copy the book I borrowed from Farengar. Fortunately, there were not many words, and I did not take the time to copy the original runes, only the translations. I needed to get the book back to Farengar so he could continue his research into the return of the dragons. Perhaps between the 2 of us, we'd be able to puzzle out what was happening and why. We decided that Maurice and I would leave tomorrow for Eldergleam Sanctuary. He was eager to get there, and I was eager to be rid of him. He was quite a useless fellow, unwilling to sully his hands with work and too afraid to fight. Before dragging Maurice into the wilderness, I planned to make a quick morning stop in Whiterun first to return Farengar's book, hopefully without notice.